First storyteller we're going to have is Michelle Olsen. She was a Wall Street quantitative strategist before leaving the corporate world. After the 2016 election, she was one of the founding members of Minuteman Indivisible, an organization dedicated to civic engagement and protest over the most corrosive, undemocratic practices of the Trump administration. Now, one of the organizers of Indivisible Massachusetts, Michelle is building the network of indivisible groups across the state of Massachusetts into a sustainable organization. Please welcome our first storyteller, Michelle.
I am not a born protester. In fact, the system worked for me pretty well. I was lucky. I was born into a stable family. I grew up in a lovely town in upstate New York. I got to go to good school. I got to study physics at a great college. And when I graduated back in 1989, a lot of doors were open to me. I actually started my own business right out of school. It was fairly successful. And somehow I found my way to Wall Street, where I got a job developing financial models and developing trading strategies. I got an MBA along the way, and I did a couple of other startups in the dot-com boom, and when those went bust, I went back to Wall Street. In there, I got married, and when I had my second child, I decided I would leave Wall Street, and we spent the next number of years actually traveling around the country, around the world with my husband's career, until just last year when we decided we'd move back and we settled right here in Lexington. So I've always worked very hard, and I've managed to have a pretty successful, happy life thus far. However, I've always been very keenly aware that I've had every opportunity and a fair dose of luck, and that there are many in this country that have not had those opportunities, and that it's actually getting harder, not easier, to survive without the resources that I was given. So I've always supported candidates and policies that sought to build those resources in our communities. I've always been a Democrat. I've always followed politics. I would donate to candidates. I canvassed. I always voted. But it also always stopped there. I never felt that I had a personal battle that I needed to protest. And I always felt that the political system was a bit inaccessible, actually, and a little bit broken. Well, like a lot of you, I'm sure, I was pretty horrified at the whole scene in 2016. I was actually still over in England, and I watched Brexit happen, and then I came back here and saw exactly the same dynamic, but just amped up 10 times. And it wasn't just Donald Trump. It was the whole divisiveness. It was the demeaning of facts, of science, and of reasoned discourse. I felt like my fundamental core values were under existential threat. But I was hopeful that it was all going to magically go away after the election, and we would all resume some kind of normalcy. Well, that didn't happen. That night, I drank an entire bottle of wine, watching those returns come in. I didn't know how I was going to tell my children that the man who I had declared was a hazard to the planet had just been elected our next president. And then I thought of her, Hillary. How she must have felt. Not just losing, but that she had lost that to him. I watched her concession speech. She stood there in her purple suit. She talked about how we cherish the rule of law and the peaceful transfer of power, those fundamental principles on which this nation was founded. I cried a lot. But you know, in that speech, she didn't lose hope. And she said, "Our constitutional democracy demands our participation, not just every 4 years, but all the time." And I knew she was right. I had been given so much, I had certainly taken it for granted. So I made a resolution. I resolved that I would spend the next chunk of my life working on this. I didn't exactly know how I was going to do this. I figured out that she had done her part, and now it was time for me and for thousands like me to take up that mantle. So I got a picture of her in her purple suit, and I cut it out, I framed it, and I put it on my desk, and I sat down to figure it out. Here it is. So what to do? I was in a new town, just moved back, no community, and scared for the future of the planet. I was never one for organized religion, but I decided if there was ever a time, this was it. I had heard of the Unitarians. I Googled and saw that there was a new minister at First Parish, and lo and behold, she was holding open sessions on coping with the election results. This was definitely a sign from the gods. So I attended one of those coping sessions, and I met a wonderful set of people there. And some of us there felt that local action wasn't going to be enough, that we really needed to engage in the political process. I had been reading this document online that had gone viral, and it was entitled "Indivisible: A Practical Guide to Resisting the Trump Agenda." It was written by ex-congressional staffers who had watched the Tea Party and how they had successfully lobbied and protested. The guide was strategic, it was concrete, and it was inspiring. There was a place on the website where you could search for local groups. The closest one that came up was in Concord, and so I went there with Pete and Carolyn to that first meeting, and it was great. And we decided we needed a group here, right here in Lexington, the birthplace of the revolution after all. So we went and we registered Minuteman Indivisible. For our first meeting, it was right here in First Parish, and we set out about 20 chairs, and 76 people showed up. We were thrilled. We formed teams, we put up a Facebook group, eventually a website, and we set out to follow the practices in the guide. Those first months were full of feverish energy. And I have to tell you, it felt really good to be surrounded with so many people who shared my concerns. We planned marches, so many marches, too many marches. We made phone calls over many issues. We wrote postcards. We made donations to campaigns. Oh, I've lost my page. There we are. There we are today. There are now over 6,000 indivisible groups across the country, at least 2 in every congressional district, hundreds of thousands of members. And in these 8 months, we've all learned so much. And we now focus on our most effective strategies. So in Massachusetts here, we've put together a lot of lobbying efforts and provided testimony in the Massachusetts State House over a number of issues: climate change, safe communities, many, many issues. On the national level, we've set up phone banks to help out-of-state candidates and also to protect our health care when they were doing the repeal and replace. My own particular focus right now is actually on flipping the House in 2018. I made a spreadsheet that would make my Wall Street quant friends smile. Consider it sort of Moneyball meets congressional districts. And we've already held 3 fundraisers for our selected candidates. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be holding a statewide conference just down the road in Worcester with a full day of workshops on best practices and also in building the Indivisible Network across the state. So, I'm still not a natural protester. I prefer to build things rather than to tear them down. I'm finding my way more through organization and strategy, but there are many, many ways to protest. You can make posters, you can make phone calls, make donations, you can also make a spreadsheet, or a website, or a video. Whatever your skills are, we need them. So I'll close by quoting Hillary again. My friends, let us have faith in each other. Let us not grow weary. Let us not lose heart. For there are many seasons to come, and there's more work to do. Let's get to work. Thank you.